Okay, so I'm back and I had about a week with Final Cut Pro for the iPad, and here's my first impression. So off the bat, with my workflow, compound clips, I feel like them not having this on the iPad for Final Cut Pro is a big miss for Apple. It's just something I use all the time. I have a Panasonic GH5 II, and they kind of break up the video clips. So if I can compound those together, it would just make my life a lot easier. So that feature is not available on the iPad for Final Cut Pro. I feel like I'm saying it backwards. It's not on Final Cut Pro for the iPad. I think that's how I should say it. Another miss, I think, is Apple really needs to enable editing from an external SSD, since I would say you would need at least 2 terabytes. Maybe you get away with 1 if you have a low res, like a 1080p video, but I think 2 terabytes will be the way to go. But that starts at $1,900. I never thought I would say an iPad costs $1,900, and they can top out at about $2,200. So that's quite expensive for an iPad. Also think if they enable this feature, which I think they are, from an SSD, you can maybe at some point copy, from your Mac to the iPad, or go from your iPad to the Mac and go back and forth. So it's going to be exciting to see if this is something that, will flourish at some point. Otherwise, we really need to get things moving with plugins. I think a lot of creators, they use plugins. So I won't be surprised if this is something we see fairly soon. I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that is at the top of Apple's list for enabling for Final Cut Pro for the iPad. I'm sorry, I'm probably ranting a lot here, but I've been using Final Cut Pro for a long time, and I say probably over 10 years, and there's just stuff that I need in my workflow to get things done. But another thing is syncing audio and video on Final Cut Pro for the Mac. This is a time saver, but it's absent for Final Cut Pro for the iPad. You really have to depend on the waveforms to sync your main audio up with your scratch audio inside of Final Cut Pro for the iPad. This should also be at the top of Apple's list of features to enable. I am happy to see we do have a Zoom to Fit shortcut, but it looks like the Zoom to Fit is a keyboard shortcut. I'm upset we can't actually customize shortcuts at this point. Maybe something we should see in a future update. You see the theme here? These are things we should see in an update. And it's like, I know Apple knows that we want this stuff, but we should see that. The customizable shortcuts. People use shortcuts all the time. It just makes the workflow a lot easier. So maybe at some point we'll see that. I do wish we did have something like a touch bar option, I would say, inside of Final Cut Pro, where you can, I would say, establish a list of shortcuts in like a touch bar fashion, maybe at the bottom of the iPad screen, as opposed to just using a connected keyboard. Another one to feature is mute audio. There's really no way to mute your audio. Not normally, but I have to turn down the scratch audio, but there's just not a button you can click. The only way you can do this is by using I guess it's kind of the same way on the Mac, where there's no mute. I think there is. Oh, you can uncheck which audio source. So I guess it's sort of like a mute button, but I didn't even see that. Maybe it's somewhere, but there is nowhere, because you can't sync audio. So you don't have like different audio options. So there's really nothing to uncheck. With that said, fun fact, Final Cut Pro for the iPad only works in landscape mode. I think enabling portrait mode would give us more flexibility when operating Final Cut Pro on the iPad for scenarios like, color grading. I do have a question, after using Final Cut Pro on the iPad, if you used it, do you now have this desire to use a jog wheel when editing? Let's say a project on a Mac. Is it just me, or do you have that desire as well? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below. Moving on, I do miss the idea that we cannot increase playback speeds by multiples of 2, 4, 8, and 20. If you want to increase, you have to use a virtual dial or key in your percentage. So hopefully that comes to Final Cut Pro for the iPad. I do love how you can fade audio. I think that's pretty cool. Live drawing, new feature, but it's not my style, but I tried it out and it's pretty cool. Definitely pretty cool. The one thing I may use is the scene removable mask. Pretty cool. Definitely a time saver compared to doing it manually with keyframes. I actually use this feature in my thumbnail, so I might add it to a video in the future on one of my videos. Otherwise, that's my first impression. I am really excited to see what updates Apple brings to us down the pipeline. I am wondering if this will be mentioned at WWDC. Maybe they'll give us some more features. WWDC is going to have a lot of stuff going on if they announce this. It's crazy. It's like, this is definitely keynote worthy, but they didn't mention it. So it's like, wow, what are they going to be talking about at WWDC? Anyway, WWDC or Dub is in a couple weeks. And only time will tell, but I do appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you like the video. It really helps out the channel. And you want to see more from Apple Fan Dad. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one.